Okaeri! Welcome back to my channel, Made Between the Pages. My name is Taylor, and today we're going to be doing the part 2 of my Books Before BookTube series. I started this series on my channel last month, or a couple months ago, because I realized that I started BookTube pretty late into my life, and naturally, we talk about the books that we're reading at the time, around the time that we're filming, and it's very rare that we kind of focus on books that we picked up in the last couple of years. I see quite a few videos talking about, childhood favorites and things like that, which I am interested in making in the future, but I wanted to create a series where I could talk about the books that I really loved in the more recent years before I actually picked up a camera, and so I didn't really get the chance to talk about them so much. The first couple installations of this series are going to talk about books that I love. All of them were either 5 stars or a 4 stars that was really close to a 5 stars. And in some later installations, I'm going to be talking about books that I really didn't like. Today, we're going to be talking about books that I loved. The first one I want to talk about here is the Lies of Lockemora, or the Gentleman Bastard series. Really the whole series. I have the collector's editions behind me. They're kind of hard to see. Let me get those out. So thus far, the Gentleman Bastard series has 3 books: The Lies of Lockemora, Red Seas Under Red Skies, and The Republic of Thieves. Now these are the special edition versions. Mine are a little bit beat up because I actually read the special edition versions, which I think is quite rare. People, including myself, tend to get special editions to have them on their shelves, but I actually read these, so, they're a little worn in. But I love these, and I love this series. The Lies of Lockemora was 5 shining stars for me. Red Seas Under Red Skies, I think, was a 4.5 or 5 stars. Also enjoyed this one immensely. And then the third one, The Republic of Thieves, this was a 4-star book for me. So still something that I truly love and enjoy, but it wasn't quite at the same caliber as these two. For those of you who have been around my channel for a little while now, you know that adult fantasy is my main genre. I do read other genres, but because it's my main one, I have experienced a lot of different worlds, and it's very rare that I see something and I'm like, that's new. Are there other fantasy books that have the same vibes? Yes, absolutely. But the descriptions of this world and the characters, what they do in this world, felt really unique and new and fresh. This first book, The Lies of Lockemora, follows our main character, Lockemora, and he is the leader of a lovable rogue band, a band of thieves. And these thieves specifically target the rich, not necessarily to give to the poor. So it's not, what's the word? Robin Hood type story, but they specifically target high society and take money from those people. The fact that these main characters are not necessarily good people, but the fact that you love them so much despite of, and maybe even because of that, really is a standout point in Lynch's writing. This story begins when our group of thieves is attempting to pull off a very big scheme, and things don't necessarily go according to plan. The witty banter in here is phenomenal, and it features one of my favorite platonic friendships that I've ever read between Locke and Jean. Those two are my babies, and I love their relationship together so much. I highly recommend picking up this series if you haven't. I kind of see it go through different phases, like it'll be recommended a lot on BookTube and then people won't talk about it at all. And then it'll be recommended again and then it'll disappear for a while. So if you haven't heard of this before, because it's been kind of silent about this series lately, I highly recommend that you pick it up. The beginning is one of those beginnings where it just throws you in and you're kind of like, what's going on? Oh my gosh. But once things start to come together, it is worth the initial slight confusion. The 4th book in this series is hopefully going to come out one day. We do have a title, The Thorn of Emberlane, but Scott Lynch hasn't really released specifics on when that book might be coming out, so we're all just kind of waiting around for it. But I do think that the joy you can get from this series is worth the wait. I'm back. I need my stack. The next book that I want to talk about is a book that I have heard no one discuss ever, and I just don't think it's a well-known book. And I found it at my library, my local library here, and that is called The Accidental Office Lady. I can't remember the author right now, but I'll put the picture up here. This book is more of an autobiographical story about a woman who came to work in Japan back when foreigners were not a typical thing here. We still aren't in certain areas, but this was back, I believe, in the 80s when foreigners just didn't really work here, especially permanently. And she went to Tokyo to work in the main office of Toyota. I think it was Toyota, not Honda. Toyota. She was supposed to be in more of a managerial position, a translation position, and, you know, responsible for outreach to other countries. And when she came to Japan, she was coming off of a pretty good job in America. However, Japanese work culture is not good for women, to put it lightly, especially Japanese women. So when she comes over here, she really has this clash between her expectations, her desires, and her cultural background, and Japan's expectations for women in the workplace at the time, and what was available for her to do when she was here. And she really struggled with this back and forth of loving certain aspects of Japan, and other aspects of it driving her up the wall and making her crazy. And I can completely understand those two warring sides of yourself, because I have those two warring sides inside me right now. I love this country, but the way that they treat women is not good, especially in workplaces. It's getting better, but at the time that this author came over here, it was pretty bad. And there are some humorous instances in here as well, but I just really liked how this was a mix of social commentary and also the personal experience of this woman that I could completely connect to on almost every level. In later parts of the book, she also does take the initiative to start being the change she wants to see, and that was really inspiring for me in my life here as well. I think I ended up giving this book 4 or 4.5 stars. It wasn't a full 5 stars from me, but like, I don't remember why, because thinking back on it now and talking about it, why wasn't it? I'm gonna have to read my Goodreads review after this. The next book I want to talk about is Bear Town by Fredrik Backman. Now, since I started my channel, I have talked about Fredrik Backman before, but mostly in the context of A Man Called Ove. That is a book that I read in May, maybe, and it's one of my favorite books of this year. Still, it's 5 stars. I'm obsessed with it. Bear Town was no different. This was the first book I read by Fredrik Backman, and it destroyed me. I was a sobbing, bawling mess. My fiance was very concerned because I was listening via audiobook through headphones, so he didn't know what was going on, and I just started crying my eyes out multiple times, but definitely at the end. We were hanging out in the same room, and I was doing a puzzle, and I just started crying while doing a puzzle. He's like, "Oh my God, do you need water? Do you need a hug? Like, do you know that raccoon meme or the gif with the raccoon touching the cat? Like, checking if it's okay?" That was my fiance, because he was like, "I don't know what to do with you right now." And if that's not a testament to how good Backman is at delivering on his concepts and his characters, I don't know what is. I am not a contemporary reader, you can see from the shelf behind me, but there are a few authors that just, the way he writes, I don't know, it gets into my core. And Bear Town is a very, very in-depth, personal assessment and conversation about rape culture. This book takes place in a small town where a girl is raped by a member of the hockey team, and in this small town, hockey is everything. So it's all about the fallout from that, and it's heavy. Don't pick this up thinking like, oh, it's a happy cry. Like, it's heavy, but I highly recommend it because it's amazing. Kind of sticking with that same theme, we're going to talk about Not That Bad by Roxane Gay. This is a collection of personal essays written by people who have had experiences in rape culture. So as you can see at the top here, it says Dispatches from Rape Culture. So again, this is not a light book. Don't pick this up expecting your heart not to break, to hurt, to ache, because it will. But most people, especially women that I know in my life, have all had experiences with rape culture. And this book hits so close to home. And this doesn't just show the perspectives of women, it shows the perspectives from people from all ranges of gender identities, and it's hard. It's hard to read, but it's necessary, I think. As someone who's had experiences similar to those in the book herself, I felt seen in a world where most people tell you it's not that bad. And this book tells you it is that bad. And you're not wrong for suffering after having that experience. And to have a book make me feel that way, please read it. This was 5 stars. To go a little bit lighter and go back to the fantasy realm, I'm going to talk about the Darker Shades of Magic series by v.e.schwab. Now, this is the first book in the series, A Darker Shade of Magic. The second one is A Gathering of Shadows, and the third one is A Conjuring of Light. I have read all 3, but I only have the first one with me here in Japan. But the book I'm going to talk about here is the second book, The Gathering of Shadows, not this one. A Gathering of Shadows was 5 stars for me. This first book and the last book were not my favorite. I think I ended up giving them 3.5, if I was generous, maybe 4 stars on Goodreads. But v.e.schwab is typically that author that I love her premises, and I'm like, oh, this sounds so good. And then I read the book, and the application of that, the way that she writes that concept, just doesn't click for me. It never really works. And the first book in this series was not, was the same in that regard. But A Gathering of Shadows, I loved that book. And not necessarily because I love Lila Bard, who is like the main character that we follow in that book. I do enjoy her as a character, but that book had a magical, competition and battles, and we got to see outside of the place where almost all of the characters were for the first and the third book. We got to see other aspects of that world, and I love that part of fantasy, when we get to see other cultures, other places, and see how wide the world really is. And the second book did that, and I loved it. If you're not aware, the Darker Shades of Magic series is about a main character named Kel and also Lila Bard. Kel has the ability to pass between different Londons, because in this world there are 3 different Londons. There is Grey London, Red London, and Black London, I think. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. It's been a long time since I read these. Red London is where Kel is from, and that has magic. It's a fully functioning magical London. Then the Black London was destroyed by magic, I believe, yes. And then Grey London is, our world, where magic has been forgotten. But Kel is one of the only people in the world who's able to go between these different Londons. And he ends up smuggling an artifact from one London to another that he should not have touched, and it kind of goes from there. See, that premise sounds so good, right? But the second book was amazing, but the first and third book just didn't deliver that for me. The next book on this list is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I read this book, I think in 2019. Yes, in 2019. And Michelle Obama and Ruth Bader Ginsburg are my 2 heroes. And we're not going to talk about RBG right now, because I bawled my eyes out already multiple times, and I can't handle it. I can't handle it. And to have one of my life's heroes no longer be on this earth is just, it's painful. So I'm really, really thankful that Miss Michelle is still going strong. She has been an inspiration for me probably since the beginning of university. And when I heard that she was writing a book, I was like, give it to me. All the shipping in the world, yes, give it to me. But actually, I didn't have to pay shipping because my fiance was wonderful and he bought it for me secretly when we went back to America a couple of years ago and gave it to me. I read this book as a mixture of audiobook and physical because Michelle herself reads the audiobook, and it's amazing to hear an author read their own work. This woman, what she has accomplished in life and the outlook she has is just so inspirational. And after I read this book, I was inspired to just like do something to make this world the place that I want it to be. Like, why am I not the one making that happen, you know? And there are many things that I look up to Michelle Obama for, but one of them, wherever she goes, she leaves her mark on it and she tries to leave it better than when she arrived. And that is something that I want to emulate in my life, no matter where I live or who I'm with. Going back to the fantasy realm yet again here, we're going to talk about Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. Now, unlike Brandon Sanderson, who I am a huge fan of and don't talk about a lot on my channel, I have read almost all of Cassandra Clare's books, at least up until the, is it Infernal Devices? No, that's the old one. What is the series called that Lady Midnight is in? I'll put it up here. This one. I've read up to Lord of Shadows, and then I read all of her series, the main series, leading up to that point, but I haven't read past there. And it's not because I don't like her books. They're really hit or miss for me. But the only one that I read that was a full 100% 5 stars for me was Lady Midnight. I don't remember the details. I read it once and it was quite a long time ago. But I just remember it was fun. It was so much fun. I was invested in the characters, and when they were in danger, I was worried, and that's the sign of a really good book. I was also really invested in, I think it's Emma and Julian, and the Blackthorn family gave me warm, fuzzy feels in my heart. So I just really, really enjoyed this book. Whether I will finish the series with, I think it's, what is it, The Queen of Darkness, and then I think she's writing another one. Whether I will finish it, eventually, yes, I plan to, but it's definitely not like high priority. But her books do bring me joy. The last book on my list here is Sadie. This book was pretty hype in 2019, and I read this as an audiobook through my library because many people said that the audiobook was the way to go, as it's a podcast format. So this book is about a girl whose younger sister goes missing, and she's pretty sure that she knows what horrible things have happened to her, and so she goes on a mission to go find her sister. But then in the end, this girl also goes missing. So the story is a podcast format about a host on a podcast trying to discover what happened to these girls. And it's heavy, so heavy, and it hurts, but it's so well done. And I loved the ending of this book. I don't usually like open endings, but this one was, it couldn't have ended any other way. It couldn't have. I also agree that audiobook is the way to go for this if you would like to pick it up, because it's got a full cast. It's even got ambient words, noises that show where the person is. In the audiobook, so it really immerses you. And I just highly, highly recommend this if the premise sounds interesting to you. That concludes part 2 of my Books Before BookTube series. Leave a comment down below if you've read these before, if you liked them, if you didn't like them, if you're interested in them. I'd love to have discussions with you guys. But for now, I'm gonna head out. Jenny.